What's going on, guys? Antonio here. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up for me, and let's get into it. All right, so we've got a post. This is Larry Hama's personal Facebook page. And if you know about Larry Hama, this man, been working in the comic book industry for like 40 plus years. When I was a kid, I read his Transformers. I read his G.I. Joe. I mean, a lot of the stuff that has carried over from G.I. Joe was created by Larry Hama. Matter of fact, they mentioned him. He was in, I know in the first G.I. Joe movie that they made was The Rise of Cobra. He was one of when they met with the chief, the military generals or whatever, which Larry Hama is actually a army vet. And they had him in uniform as one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He had, and it actually had his name Hama on there. That was them showing him love because Larry Hama was so instrumental to G.I. Joe. A lot of the backstory with Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes and all that. Larry Hama is so important, especially to G.I. Joe. Like I said, he wrote a lot of Transformers too, but so many people identify Larry Hama with G.I. Joe, so a lot of them don't even really talk about the stuff he did with Transformers, but his G.I. Joe stuff is so important and just shaped my childhood. But he kind of took some offense to the end credits for Deadpool and Wolverine. Let me zoom in here. They're thanking all these the Marvel Studio people and blah blah blah, and then it gets to the line, Deadpool created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. You can go on Rob Liefeld's Twitter page, and the first thing that he has pinned is him explaining to people that yes, he likes Fabian, but Fabian didn't co-create Deadpool, and that irks him when people point out that Fabian is the co-creator of Deadpool. And he even has a article clipped, an interview with Fabian, where Fabian acknowledges that Rob had already created Deadpool when he was brought on to New Mutants. Rob had already he had sketched Deadpool out, so the costume that we know was already created. He had already given him the name Deadpool. He actually said in the interview, he was like, yeah, he opened up the book. He's showing me different sketches. He pointed to this guy and he said, this is Deadpool. And he wanted to use him because they were about to stop publishing New Mutants, and they wanted to rebrand it Rob. If you listen to Rob's podcast, Robservations, he talks about a lot of this as well. Was it Bob Harris that was the VP over at Marvel, and he was in charge of their line. And one thing they had a problem with on the New Mutant stuff was that all the other X books were X this, X that, X that. And he was like, then we got New Mutants. So he wanted to rebrand New Mutants and change it to X-Force. And so that's what they were preparing with New Mutants 100 to end it and then go into X-Force. And Rob was working with Louise Simonson, who is the wife of Walt Simonson. She's also the co-creator of Apocalypse, and she created Nathan Summers, who of course Rob had created this character Agent X, and then they meshed the two, and Agent X of course became Cable, but they didn't get along when they were working together. She's mentioned that she would write stuff, and Rob would turn in his pages, and it was completely different from what her script was. So she didn't like working that way, and Rob he wanted to write the books, or at least plot them out and have the writer just kind of pretty the dialogue up. So Louise, they found a stopping point for her. They brought Fabian in. He was working on New Warriors, which I loved. Fabian was a great writer on that. And they brought him in, and like I said, he pointed out some stuff that he wanted to include, and Deadpool was in that. Okay. So then we go to them mentioning who created Wolverine, and it was Len Wein, John Romita Sr., and was Herb Trimpe or Trimp. Either way, not trying to disrespect. And then they mentioned Roy Thomas. Now, if you followed this part, this is controversial because some people say that Roy Thomas should not have been given credit for co-creating Wolverine. For the longest, it was just Len Wein, John Romita Sr., and Herb Trimpe. And about a year or two ago, they announced that they were going to start giving Roy Thomas credit, kind of like how they did at DC, where Batman was solely created by Bob Kane. And then after years, decades of people going, hey, Bill Finger was the one that really, yeah, Bob had an idea, but Bill Finger really had the behind the scenes stuff. Like, you can watch documentaries on how Batman was actually created, or Bob Kane would have an idea, but Bill Finger would refine that idea, and it was like his idea to do Robin and stuff like that. So after, what was it? This is within the last 10 or so, 15 years, they've actually gone back and like all the Batman stuff, when you see it, it always says now it was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. So Roy Thomas was the editor-in-chief at Marvel, I guess, after Stan Lee had stepped down. He apparently had some input on the initial launch of Wolverine when Herb was drawing Incredible Hulk. And I know John Romita Sr. had did some sketch designs on how Wolverine's costume should look. So they've always given him credit. Obviously, Len is the writer. So normally what happens when they create a character is that the artist and the writer get co-creation credits for like movie and television stuff. So that's why it was always Len, John, and Herb. And then, but like I said, Roy Thomas as editor-in-chief, apparently he had some input that he never got credit for. And now they have started giving him credit as co-creator of Wolverine. Then underneath this, they, Chuck Austin, who I'm friends with and on Facebook, and there's so many people that they use different stories from, right? Chris Claremont, Chris Claremont wrote Wolverine for like over 17 years. He wrote X-Men for over 17 years. And when they launched the solo Wolverine, the miniseries that was drawn by Frank Miller, that was Chris Claremont. And then they gave Wolverine an ongoing solo series, and that was Chris Claremont and John Buscema. And so, but yeah, you see all these people. I see Marv Wolfman's name. There's so many people. Walter Simonson. I just mentioned his wife, Louise Simonson. Mark Silvestri's name. Grant Morrison's on here. There's so many people that were thanked. Al Ewing, who is just an incredible inker. Jim Lee, Stan Lee. You see all these people. Larry Lieber, who is Stan Lee's brother. And I think he's also listed as one of the co-creators of Iron Man, if I'm not mistaken, Larry Lieber. But if you go through all those names, Larry Hama's name is not on there at all. And so obviously, he didn't create Wolverine, but I'm going to explain why maybe he should have at least gotten a thank you or something in the credits. But as you can see here, he posted, "I've long believed that I am being systematically written out of Marvel history," right? And it is kind of disrespectful that they didn't at least thank him in the credits. But he also followed up with this: "Considering that I wrote the first meeting between Deadpool and Wolverine in Wolverine 88. And I remember this was during the time," trying to remember, I think this is Bone Claw Wolverine, because we would not have Bone Claw Wolverine without Larry Hama. When they decided to the Fatal Attraction storyline was actually written by Fabian Nicieza, that issue where Magneto pulled the adamantium out of Wolverine. Chris Claremont had always established that when the Weapon X stuff happened, that they inserted those adamantium claws into Wolverine. He was not born with claws. And you'll see stories that were written about Wolverine in the past before the retcon where he was, he was a mutant and he could heal, but he didn't have claws. And now, Larry Hama, apparently when they decided to remove the adamantium from Wolverine, Larry Hama was the one that goes, hey, why don't we do the bone? Say he still has his claws. He has the bone. He didn't want to write Wolverine and he don't have the claws. That didn't make sense. I've always been kind of, because of all the Chris Claremont stuff I read, I didn't love the idea of the bone claws. But I mean, it's canon now, and that's what it is. And I love Larry Hama, so I don't, that particular choice I didn't necessarily agree with. But we would not have Bone Claw Wolverine, which actually ended up having some really cool stories without Larry Hama. It was Larry Hama's sticking point that he wanted Wolverine to have Bone Claw. So that's it. But this cover from Adam Kubert, who the Kubert family, Joe Kubert, these guys are legends also. But Larry Hama and Adam Kubert, when they were working on Wolverine, and his brother, Andy Kubert, was drawing X-Men. This was after everybody had left and gone to Image. So this was, there was some really cool stories. What was that Albert and LCD and the whole deal. They had some really cool storylines when Larry Hama and Adam Kubert were working together. But this is the first time that Deadpool and Wolverine met each other. This is the cover from Wolverine 88. So you're doing Wolverine versus Deadpool in a movie, and the very first time that they ever met, was actually written by Larry Hama, and you don't even put his name on the credits. So he obviously feels away, and there's a lot of fans here. He's talking to different, here's another one. And why did they exclude Barry Windsor Smith? I didn't even notice that. That's crazy, because anybody that knows about the Weapon X storyline that Barry Windsor, if you're a Wolverine fan and you know Barry Windsor Smith and the work he did on, what was it? It was in Marvel Comics Presents. And that was one of the hottest. I remember I was reading Wizard magazine, and those Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X, you can buy that in the trade paperback now. They took all those, how Marvel Comics Presents, they would have like a little 10-page story and then another little 10, it'd be like a little short. They give you the story in little bites, and then they sell it as a trade later on. But that Weapon X story from Barry Windsor Smith was just absolutely fantastic, and it's such an important Wolverine story, and so that's interesting. I didn't notice that they didn't thank Barry Windsor Smith, but I agree with Larry that they should have at least mentioned. It don't take that much effort. I'm sure somebody just forgot or whatever, but I have heard Larry in different interviews over the last few years. He kind of feels like Marvel kind of took the work, like I said, especially the G.I. Joe stuff, they took his work for granted. And, although he happens to mention that they just put out, what was it, like a year or two ago, there was a huge G.I. Joe omnibus. It was like oversized, and it had all the, big thing. They were selling it. They were making so much money off of it. It's like this big oversized edition with like the artist proofs and all this. And they had like a Kickstarter. It, generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. And so he's mentioned that. He's like, you guys keep reprinting my work, and then when the movies come, you don't really give me that much credit. So I understand that from him. Because like I said, this isn't just some guy. This is a guy, over 40 years in the game is such an important. So I agree with him that they should have at least acknowledged him in the end credits there. But like I said, I know this is a longer one, but I love comics. I'm so passionate about it. What do you guys think? Is he wrong, or hey, somebody just made a mistake or whatever? Maybe when they release it to home video platforms, when they put it like on Disney Plus or whatever, then maybe because I've seen them do that before, where someone calls them out and they'll go back and they'll add something to the home video release of it, which they, like I said, if they did that, that would not be the worst thing to, at least, because like I said, Larry should definitely be there. Barry Windsor Smith should definitely be there as well. But what do you guys think? We are so close to 3,000. I need you. I want you. Give me a follow. Facebook, Instagram, I'm on X, I'm on Threads, all at Ikari Press. Type in IkariPress.com. It will take you to my comic book brand, Way of the Gun. I've got the link to that and my Gumroad in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out.